There exists a fundamental paradox at the heart of human existence. We spend our entire lives resisting what is, fighting against the current of reality itself, believing that if we struggle hard enough, if we control enough variables, we can bend the universe to our will. Yet the greatest teachers across centuries have whispered the same unsettling truth. The moment we stop resisting, the moment we surrender to what is, everything changes. This is not weakness. This is not resignation. This is the most profound act of strength a human being can perform. Consider the river. It does not negotiate with the rocks in its path. It does not curse the valley it flows through. It does not demand that gravity work differently tomorrow than it did today. The river accepts the terrain, the resistance, the obstacles, and in this acceptance, it finds the path of least resistance. It moves with grace, with power, with an almost supernatural efficiency. And yet we, creatures of intellect and will, believe ourselves above such surrender. We believe that thinking harder, planning more meticulously, controlling more aggressively, will somehow exempt us from the fundamental laws that govern existence. The suffering we experience is not inherent to life itself. Life is not cruel by nature. Pain exists, yes. Discomfort exists. Challenges exist. But suffering, that particular brand of anguish that keeps us awake at night, that poisons our relationships, that steals our peace, suffering is born from the collision between what is and what we insist should be. It is born from resistance. It is born from the exhausting, futile effort to impose our will onto a reality that simply does not conform to our expectations. Think about the last time you truly suffered. Not physical pain, though that too can teach us, but the deeper suffering of the soul. Go back to that moment. Strip away the external circumstances. Look at the core of what caused that anguish. Was it not the gap between reality and your expectations? Was it not the desperate clinging to how things should have been, combined with the refusal to accept how things actually were? This is the architecture of all psychological suffering. We are taught from childhood to resist. Resist laziness. Resist temptation. Resist failure. And so we develop this incredible capacity for struggle, for pushing against, for refusing to accept defeat. These qualities have their place. They have built civilizations, they have moved mountains, but they have also created a generation of people locked in perpetual war with themselves and their circumstances. We have turned resistance into a virtue without understanding that, like all virtues, it requires wisdom to know when to apply it and when to release it. The acceptance we speak of is not passivity. This is perhaps the greatest misunderstanding. When a musician accepts the laws of music, when they stop fighting against harmony and rhythm, they do not become mediocre. They become transcendent. Their technical limitations disappear. They find flow. They create beauty. In the same way, when you accept the laws of your own nature, the nature of other people, the nature of circumstances, you do not become weak or ineffectual. You become powerful in a way that struggle can never achieve. There is a particular kind of desperation that grips the human heart when we are fighting against something we cannot change. A person resists aging, and in that resistance, they experience shame about their body, anxiety about their mortality, resentment toward time itself. But another person, who has accepted the inevitable passage of years, experiences something remarkably different. They may still take care of their health, may still move their body and nourish it well, but they do so from a place of love rather than fear, from acceptance rather than desperate resistance. And in this subtle shift lies an immense liberation. Consider how much of our suffering comes from fighting against other people. We become convinced that if we could just make them understand, if we could just change them, if we could just make them behave the way we need them to, then we would be happy. But other people are sovereign beings with their own free will, their own minds, their own paths. The moment we accept this, truly accept it, something extraordinary happens. We stop exhausting ourselves trying to control the uncontrollable. We stop taking their choices as personal failures on our part. We find peace in the midst of their chaos, or we find clarity about whether we can share space with them at all. The flow of life moves in patterns we cannot always predict. Jobs end when we thought they were permanent. Relationships transform when we thought they were fixed. Bodies change. Minds waver. The future reveals itself to be nothing like what we imagined. And in each of these moments, we have a choice. We can resist what is. We can cling to how things were supposed to be, and in doing so, we guarantee ourselves suffering. Or we can pause, breathe, and ask ourselves, what if this is exactly what needs to happen? What if this ending is actually a beginning? What if this loss is clearing space for something I cannot yet see? This is not about blind optimism. It is not about pretending that difficult things are not difficult. It is about recognizing that difficulty is not the same as wrongness. It is not about believing that everything happens for a reason in some cosmic sense. It is about understanding that everything that happens is data, is information, is an opportunity to learn something about yourself and about life. And that data is neither good nor bad until we interpret it. The mind resists not because it is foolish, but because it is trying to protect us. The mind's job is to keep us safe, to prevent us from being hurt again, to ensure predictability. So it creates stories about how things should be, and then it fights to maintain those stories against all evidence to the contrary. This is not a flaw in the human mind. This is its design. But we have the capacity to recognize this pattern and to choose something different. We can thank the mind for trying to protect us, and then we can gently release the grip of its resistance. There is a particular kind of peace that emerges when you stop fighting against what is true. Your mother will never become the mother you needed her to be, and that is painful. And you can grieve that loss. But the moment you accept it, the moment you stop waiting for her to change into someone else, the moment you accept the mother you actually have, or the absence of her, something inside you releases. It is not that you love her less, or that you have given up on her. It is that you have stopped wasting your life energy in a battle that was lost long ago. The flow of life is not moving in a direction you would have chosen. Your body is aging when you wanted it to stay young. Your hair is graying when you wanted to stay vibrant. People are leaving when you wanted them to stay. Plans are falling apart when you had arranged every detail. And yet the river flows, and yet the seasons change, and yet time moves forward. The universe does not pause to let you catch up with your expectations. It moves with or without your permission, with or without your approval. When you accept this, when you truly internalize that you are not in control of most things, that you are not the author of reality, but merely a character in the story, something shifts. You stop wasting energy on resistance and you become available for actual engagement. You can think clearly because you are not clouded by the desperation of control. You can respond creatively to circumstances because you are not locked into the single narrative you had planned. You can see opportunities because you are not blinded by the vision of how things were supposed to be. Think about the last time you were truly at peace. Was it not in a moment when you had released your grip? Perhaps you were watching a sunset and you stopped thinking about what you should be doing, and in that release, you felt the peace. Perhaps you were with someone you love, and you stopped trying to make them feel a certain way, and in that release, you felt connection. Perhaps you were working on something, and you stopped worrying about the outcome, and in that release, you found flow, and your best work emerged. These moments are not accidents, they are not random. They are previews of what is possible when you release resistance. The greatest spiritual traditions all point toward this same truth, though they use different language. In Buddhism, it is the cessation of craving and aversion. In Christianity, it is surrender to God's will. In Taoism, it is alignment with the way. In Stoicism, it is acceptance of what is beyond our control. Different cultures, different centuries, different frameworks, but the same fundamental insight. The peace we seek is found not in successful resistance, but in conscious acceptance. But acceptance is not easy. It goes against everything we have been taught. It requires you to question the fundamental stories you have been telling yourself. It requires you to grieve the loss of the future you had imagined. It requires you to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, not controlling, not having all the answers. Most people will choose continued suffering over this discomfort. They will choose the exhaustion of resistance over the vulnerability of surrender. But you are not most people, or you would not be listening to these words. Consider the athlete who has internalized the flow state. They do not think about their movements. They trust their training and allow their body to perform. They do not resist the speed of the game, they move with it. They do not fight against their opponent, they flow around them. And in this non-resistance, in this acceptance of what is happening in real time, they perform at their peak. This is not an accident of neurobiology. This is a fundamental truth about how consciousness works when it is aligned with reality rather than at war with it. The same applies to creativity. The artist who accepts the resistance of the medium, who works with it rather than against it, produces better work than the artist who fights the constraints. The writer who accepts that the story wants to go in a certain direction, who surrenders to the flow of words, writes with a fluidity that struggle cannot achieve. The entrepreneur who accepts the market conditions rather than raging against them finds solutions. In every field of human endeavor, acceptance is the gateway to excellence. We have been told that suffering is noble, that struggle ennobles us, that pain is the price of progress. But this is a particularly toxic myth. Yes, life includes difficulty. Yes, growth sometimes requires discomfort. But suffering, that particular flavor of anguish born from non-acceptance, suffering is not the price of progress. Suffering is the obstacle to progress. Difficulty plus acceptance equals growth. Difficulty plus resistance equals suffering. The equation is clear. What would change in your life if you truly accepted that you are not in control? Not in a nihilistic way, not in a way that leads to passivity, but in a realistic way that acknowledges the limits of your control. You could take action where you have agency, and you could release the exhausting effort of controlling things beyond your sphere of influence. What would change if you accepted that other people will make choices you do not approve of, and you could let that be okay? What would change if you accepted that your body will age, that you will fail sometimes, that you will be disappointed, and you stopped using all your energy to resist these inevitable truths? The answer, quite simply, is everything would change. Your relationships would transform because you would stop trying to control other people and start genuinely connecting with them. Your work would shift because you would stop working from fear of failure and start working from purpose and passion. Your inner life would quiet because you would stop the constant war between how things are and how you think they should be. Peace would become not an aspiration, but a present reality. This acceptance is not something you achieve once and then maintain forever. It is not a destination, but a practice, a moment-by-moment choice to release resistance and move with the current of life. You will slip back into resistance. You will find yourself fighting again. This is not failure. This is the human condition. The practice is simply to notice when you are resisting, to notice the suffering that resistance creates, and to make the choice once again to accept what is. There is a particular kind of forgiveness that becomes possible when you accept the flow of life. You can forgive people not because they deserve it, not because they have earned it, but because you understand that they too are moving through life doing the best they can with the understanding they have. You can forgive circumstances not because they were right, but because they were inevitable, and fighting against them only prolongs your suffering. You can forgive yourself not because your mistakes were acceptable, but because you are human, and humans make mistakes, and perfection is not the requirement for worthiness. When you accept the flow of life, you also accept your own limitations. You accept that you cannot be everything to everyone. You accept that you cannot save anyone who does not want to be saved. You accept that your influence is smaller than your ego would like it to be. And in this acceptance, you find freedom. You stop performing for an impossible standard. You stop trying to be the hero of everyone's story. You begin to live your own life, making your own choices, moving at your own pace. This is when you become truly powerful. The flow of life includes pain. It includes loss. It includes change and transformation and things falling apart. No amount of acceptance will make these experiences pleasant, but acceptance transforms your relationship to them. Instead of suffering two layers, the experience itself plus the resistance to the experience, you simply experience the experience. And then it passes, because everything passes. Nothing is permanent. Everything is flowing. Even your suffering will flow away if you stop trying to hold it. If you stop making it mean something about your worth or your future. What if the peace you have been seeking is not somewhere in the future when your circumstances finally align with your expectations? What if it is available right now, in this moment, if you simply released the demand that things be different than they are? What if the happiness you have been chasing is not dependent on external circumstances changing, but on your internal relationship to circumstances as they are? These are not rhetorical questions. These are invitations to a completely different way of being in the world. The paradox deepens when you realize that this acceptance is not resignation. It is not passivity. It is not giving up. In fact, it is the opposite. When you accept what is, you become free to take inspired action. You are no longer blinded by desperation and fear. You can see the actual situation clearly and respond intelligently. You can work toward change from a place of power rather than from a place of fear. The river accepts the valley, but moves forward nonetheless. It changes the valley as it flows. Acceptance and action are not opposites. They are partners. The collective human suffering that we see in the world often stems from widespread non-acceptance. We cannot accept that others think differently than we do, so we wage wars of ideology. We cannot accept that our bodies will age, so we destroy ourselves trying to stay young. We cannot accept that other people have autonomy, so we try to control them. We cannot accept that some things are beyond our power, so we rage against them. All of this resistance, all of this non-acceptance, creates waves of suffering that ripple outward into families and communities and societies. What if more people understood this? What if more people understood that their peace was not dependent on everyone else thinking like they do, but on their acceptance of difference? What if more people understood that their worth was not dependent on their appearance, but on their acceptance of their body as it is? What if more people understood that they could not control other people and that this was actually a gift because it freed them from an impossible task? The world would not become chaos. It would become more peaceful. People would not become less effective. They would become more powerfully aligned with reality. In the moment of accepting the flow of life, you step out of the small self and into something larger. You align with the way things actually work, with the physics of reality, with the fundamental grain of existence. This is not about becoming a different person. It is about becoming more fully yourself by releasing all the parts of yourself that were designed to resist what is. You are still you. You still have preferences. You still have will, but now that will is aligned with reality rather than at war with it. And this alignment is where true power lives. The suffering ceases not because your circumstances suddenly become what you want them to be. The suffering ceases because you stop requiring your circumstances to be different in order for you to be at peace. You stop making your peace hostage to conditions that may never materialize. You claim your peace now, in this moment, as a birthright, as a choice, as an act of radical self-love and self-respect. And from this place of peace, from this place of alignment with what is, you move through the world with a grace and power that struggle can never achieve. This is the secret that suffering has been hiding from us all along. The secret is that we have been the ones creating the suffering, not through our circumstances, but through our non-acceptance of them. And if we created it, then we have the power to release it. Not by changing all our external circumstances, though some of that may happen, but by changing our relationship to them, by accepting what is, by moving with the flow of life instead of against it, by understanding that peace is not somewhere in the future. It is available right now if we are willing to stop fighting and start flowing. There is a layer of understanding here that goes deeper than mere intellectual comprehension. Acceptance must touch something in your nervous system, must recalibrate your relationship to safety and threat. Your body has been trained to resist. Your muscles hold tension. Your breath grows shallow. Your attention narrows. This is the physiology of resistance. And when you practice acceptance, when you consciously choose to release the grip of resistance, something remarkable happens in your body. Your nervous system begins to recalibrate. Your muscles soften. Your breath deepens. Your attention expands. You move from the sympathetic activation of fight or flight into the parasympathetic calm of rest and digest. This is not just a philosophical shift. This is a biological reorientation. Notice how much of your suffering manifests physically. The tension in your shoulders that comes from carrying the weight of things you cannot control. The knot in your stomach from anxiety about the future. The tightness in your jaw from clenching against what is. These are not separate from your psychological resistance. They are the embodiment of it. And when you release the psychological resistance through acceptance, the physical tension begins to dissolve. Your body becomes a tuning fork that resonates with peace rather than with struggle. Consider the person who has just received difficult news. Their partner has left them, their job has ended, their diagnosis is serious. In the first moments, there is shock, and that is natural. But then what happens? Some people move into acceptance relatively quickly. They feel the pain, they process it, and then they begin to orient themselves toward the new reality. Other people become stuck in resistance. They replay the events differently. They imagine alternate outcomes. They rage against what happened. They negotiate with reality as if it were flexible, and the difference in their suffering is profound. The people who move to acceptance suffer, yes, but they also heal. The people locked in resistance suffer continuously without the forward motion of healing. This is not about being strong or weak. This is not about being spiritual or enlightened. This is about basic neurobiology. The brain that is locked in resistance mode cannot process information well. It cannot plan effectively. It cannot feel joy. It is stuck in a narrow band of reactivity. The brain that has accepted the situation, that has made peace with what is free to process, to plan, to feel, to move forward. Acceptance is not a luxury. It is a necessity for functional living. There is a particular kind of arrogance in non-acceptance. There is an assumption that your way was the right way, that if people had just listened to you, if circumstances had just worked out the way you planned, if the universe had just cooperated with your vision, then everything would be fine. But the universe does not exist to validate your preferences. Other people do not exist to confirm your worldview. Circumstances are not cosmic tests designed to see if you are worthy. Things happen because of millions of factors beyond your influence, and your acceptance of this reality is not defeat. It is clarity. Imagine a child building a sandcastle on the beach. The child works intently, creating elaborate towers and walls. And then the tide comes in. The castle begins to dissolve. The child has two choices. The child can rage against the tide, can spend all their emotional energy in fury that the tide dares to come in, can develop a deep resentment toward the ocean. Or the child can accept that tides come in, that sandcastles are temporary, and can either build again in a new location or simply enjoy the beauty of the destruction. The peace available in the second choice is obvious. And yet most adults spend their lives choosing the first option, raging against the inevitable tides of their existence. The acceptance of the flow of life is not something that happens once. It is a practice that must be renewed again and again, because resistance is always trying to resurface. Some days you will wake up and find yourself gripping again, find yourself demanding that things be different, find yourself angry at reality for not conforming to your expectations. This is not a failure in your practice. This is simply what it means to be human. The practice is not about never resisting again. The practice is about noticing resistance, about understanding the suffering it creates, and about choosing acceptance again, and again, and again. There is a freedom that emerges when you stop believing that your suffering is justified, when you stop telling yourself the story that you have earned the right to suffer, that your suffering is noble, that your struggle is meaningful. Yes, your struggle may be meaningful in that you are alive and engaging with reality. But the particular flavor of suffering that comes from non-acceptance, that is not noble. That is just suffering. And when you recognize it for what it is, when you stop justifying it and defending it and wearing it like a badge of honor, then you become free to release it. The acceptance of the flow of life includes the acceptance of your own complicity in your suffering. This is perhaps the most difficult acceptance of all. To recognize that no one has done this to you, that no circumstance has imposed this suffering on you, that you have created it through your non-acceptance. This is not blame. This is not guilt. This is responsibility. And responsibility is empowering, because it means that if you created the suffering, you have the power to release it. When you truly accept the flow of life, something shifts in your relationship to hope. Hope no longer becomes something that depends on external circumstances changing. Hope becomes something that lives inside you, a trust in your capacity to meet whatever comes, a confidence that you can flow with the current rather than being swept under by it. This is a hope that cannot be crushed by circumstance because it is not dependent on circumstance. It is a hope that is grounded in your own resilience and your own willingness to accept reality as it unfolds. The acceptance of the flow of life is perhaps the most radical act of freedom available to human beings. It is radical because it goes against everything the culture teaches us. It is free because it costs nothing and gains everything. And it is always available. In this very moment, you can make the choice. You can accept what is. You can release your grip on how things should be. You can align with reality. And in that acceptance, you will find that the suffering has already begun to ease. The peace has already begun to arrive. The flow of life has already begun to carry you forward. All you had to do was stop resisting and start accepting. All you had to do was trust the river. All you had to do was let go. This is the invitation that every moment of your life extends to you. This is the choice that is always available. This is the peace that has always been waiting for you.